There we go. Okay. Cornelis, thank you so much for being here. Been looking forward to this chat, been looking forward to finding out more about this pretty cool innovation that you are spearheading and you're part of. So first of all, just thank you for being with us this morning. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I mean, for me, it's always nice. Like one of the first times we openly talk about this as well. Yeah, as a startup, we've really been just focusing on getting in touch with universities, not really a lot on marketing. So, or even getting the word out there. So, thanks for the opportunity as well.
No, it's a pleasure. And so just for the people that don't know you, should probably tell everyone right away that the innovation we're talking about is called Go and Connect.
Yep.
And would you mind just summarizing it for us, just so people, before we get into it, so people know who it's for and kind of what it does?
Sure. It's a student-led social networking platform. Yeah, basically for any incoming students at the university. And yeah, I think focus on we also call it friendship software. So we really focus the social networking platform to be focused on building new connections and finding new connections. And I think that's also one of the unique parts. I think looking at other platforms like Facebook groups in the past, a lot is focused on information sharing, but it doesn't really have that friendship component to it. And also not the software is not really focused on that. So yeah, we're social networking platform. We focus on selling to universities or collaborating with universities.
Yeah.
And if we do, that means they get their own going environment. So it's always going to University of Helsinki, going to
Right.
Uppsala University. It's always specific per university, bringing those incoming students together.
Okay, so I'm quite interested in just to pick up on what you said there, that it's more friendship sort of focus, because that fascinates me. Because you're right. I mean, the Facebook groups. When I've been involved in institutions and I've looked at these Facebook groups, and you know they're generally set up by the institution is the
Mhm.
first thing, you know, and they kind of monitor it. Um, and you've got all these questions. Usually, it's kind of flat share. Um, does anybody know? Can anybody share a flat? Does anybody know about this visa question or something like that? And
Yeah,
usually, it's like that. It's quite transactional.
yeah.
It's not, you know, friendship is perhaps incidental, but it's not the focus. So, how do you actually flip that in your software? How do you actually make friendship the focus? I mean, how do you do it? What's the support structures that build that?
Yeah, I think it's being completely turned around from there. So we didn't build it using the Facebook groups as an example. We really started from looking at the problems that university students were experiencing. We started back in studies, so a lot of my classmates were going through this basically, and I would even say I was going through it myself as well. All those awkward introduction days, and maybe meeting like two or three people there, like on the first
Mm,
day, and then you stick with those two and three people. And I think the good thing about online these days, and I think what the last years have taught us even more, like if even if you look at the quantity of connections, it's so much easier to build more connections online than those two or three on an introduction day. And I think what we really try to do is take that information sharing part away by focusing a lot on um, well, we have two environments, I would say. It's one-to-one connections where students can really, on a fun way, browse through other students and other student profiles, can narrow it down, can filter for people with similar interests or people with the same study program or all of those filters at the same time.
mhm.
And yeah, and that way you're trying to find some other students that are yeah also going to your university. And the other part, I think that's a big part supporting the social part as well is the groups, because also those groups they're created by the students. And let's say there's five students interested in Harry Potter, so they put that as an interest, then that would be a Harry Potter group or
Mhm.
a vegetarian students group or a plant swap group. Like there's like it really goes all the way from a lot of like nice social interactions to sports to studies, and it really follows the demand of the students, because what they put as their interest, that decides what kind of groups are being created and what kind of groups they create themselves.
Okay, so this is the student-led angle then. So it's not like you're trying to kind of come up with things people might be interested in and create groups for them and stuff. It's generated organically from their interests. So
Exactly.
you don't have to scramble around trying to figure out what 18-year-olds are into,
No,
basically.
exactly. And I think that's also the part that students really appreciate. I mean,
Mm,
if you look at a Facebook group or even like a larger WhatsApp group, it's always the same person that speaks up, or a couple few
mhm.
that speak up, and it's not becoming very engaging, very information transactional focused, like you refer to it. I think that's the part where if it becomes smaller, like there could be 200 groups. Like it's really there's no need to put a limit to it, because if there's two students with a similar interest, that's already a reason to put them together. Like,
Yeah.
and it could be anything. It doesn't only have to be interest. Like even with Utrecht University, for example, we had 16 students, I think, with children. So that was also a reason to put them together. And so there's so many factors based on what they actually are and who they are and what they're interested in, that puts them together in smaller groups. And I think that's also a way of keeping them way more engaging.
So let's talk a minute about why this is necessary then, because you referred to your own experience, and yes, there's those awkward introductions, and it's very true, isn't it? It can even be the person that you end up sitting next to in this kind of lecture
Mhm.
hall as you're getting the course orientation, and you lean over and say, "Hey, my name's Mark," and that's it, and you kind of stick with that person, just not because you've selected them as the most likely candidate for friendship, but just because they simply happen to be sitting
Exactly.
next to you.
Yeah.
So, but in the deeper level about what's going on with students, about what they're feeling as they transition to university, because transition from primary school to high school gets a lot of attention. In many countries, it's very developed science, in fact, helping learners transition, but not a lot of attention. It's kind of almost like the assumption is that when you reach the end of high school, yeah, you're on your own. But that's not the case, is it? I mean, so what is it that makes Go and Connect necessary? What are you trying to tackle? What kind of feelings? What kind of issues are you trying to tackle here?
Yeah, I think that we can only start to imagine that, like how big the impact is of your first experience with a university and the first few people you connect with, like a support network almost. How big the impact is on your entire studies, but also like how much you enjoy it, how much you feel about it, and even how you perform in studies. I think that impact is pretty big. I think really having people going through the same thing and knowing that there are other people going through the same thing and being able to easily find them and talk with them is a huge thing to, yeah, to take, basically a feeling of isolation, but also a feeling of not feeling bonded, not feeling home, because I think feeling home is a good way to express it, because as you said, like it's primary to secondary, but like this is even often a move abroad. Like we're talking about a lot
Yeah.
of international students, and that means going to a new country, a new city, new roommates, maybe even like the first time living with roommates away from your parents.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think there's so many things going on. And what we really saw is that at the point where students started their studies, the university was organizing a lot of things, but that was also the point that studies were getting started. So a lot of
Mhm.
those students would dive into the library, would get stuck behind their laptop, and yeah, right in with studies. And I think that's why it's very important to realize that if you want to tackle those problems, and if you want to, well, basically make sure that they build more connections and that they feel connected and they feel that belonging, that they feel home, that's the part where you should start way earlier. Because I would even
Yeah.
argue that I already named the point about quantity of connections, but I would also say that people are more open to connections before arrival, because they simply don't have a lot of other things on their mind. Once they've arrived, they've got their studies, they've got their home, they've got this new place to settle into. There's so many things that occupy their mind and their schedule. But if you start way earlier, like, I don't know, often we start in April, or sometimes even earlier, when a student is still about to go, I think that's where you've got so much time to just browse around in a fun way, and see if there's people that you would like to connect with, or even get people suggested based on so many similarities. That's I think just a simpler way and more effective way of doing that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. And it's a good point, because I think if I think about the UK, we've got something, Freshers Week, which is a very intensive week of just, letting loose, and then suddenly the studies start. And it's the connections you make that week that you'll tend to stick with, but again, it's quite incidental. It's where you happen to go to. And the thing is that if you are already feeling somewhat anxious about social interaction, because not everybody is able to sort of meet people in a very highly intensive social situation. That suits a certain type of person, but it doesn't suit everybody. And so the people who are already feeling anxious about generating social interactions, face to face, to start them, they're going to fall further and further behind and become more isolated. And
And
that's
those are
what I
also
think
the
this does a
people.
good job of addressing.
Yeah, and I think those are also the people that if you create a bigger group, those are the people that would not stand out, that would not,
Yes.
that would read the information maybe, but that would never use it as a way to also build friendships and connections. But the way we've turned the software around, like very being student led, and like even that person that is introvert or that is more lonely or doesn't speak out, he will have some interest, and there will be other people that are the same. And I think our algorithms are just very good in finding those people for them and helping them to do so.
So before this kind of software, it seems like universities, I mean, obviously they've tried to use things like the Facebook groups. That's been the most recent sort of trying to use technology. And, we've already covered how that ends up being quite transactional. And it's clearly often managed by the institution as well, which gives it this feel, it's a bit different. I mean, apart from that, you've got the student ambassadors, which I'm not entirely sure how successful that is standalone. But it seems like when we talk about the things like isolation and anxiety, that there is a lot on offer from institutions, but it seems to be once you get there, and it seems to be and this is my opinion, and I wonder if you agree, that it's kind of at crisis point that
it's
a
not
student would go
preventive.
to a counselor. It's not preventative.
Yeah.
So is that kind of part of the argument that you're making? Is it about well-being and mental health as well?
100%. Like that's exactly what it is about. So I would say it's about student support and student satisfaction, and a big part of that is, of course, their well-being and their mental health. And I think, I don't even have to point to researchers, but there are so many that, like even in your article, that show that a network, social networks, and people are like one of the best preventions of becoming isolated and becoming in a state of mental health issues. And then that's the point where I say, like, it also the point you make about Facebook groups and about the institution managing things. I think that's perfect. Like, I think it's great for information sharing, but it's not the best environment to build new friendships and build new connections. Like, that's where, especially for this generation, I would even argue, like, why do they leave Facebook? Like, because their parents are there, because someone's watching them there, or someone's using their data there. I think there's different reasons why they stop using those things. And I think if you create something like that as a university and a student knows that's happening, then still it could be a very good solution for what you want it to use for as an institution, for sharing your information, and in your way bringing the students together. But I would really know that, like, if you, that's really comparing functionalities. If you would compare results, which is why I think we're going through such a high growth, if you would compare results, you would see that building friendships and building really those connections is so much more effective on a platform like we're having. And yeah, and I think that preventative is really the thing that, yeah, that's one of the main things we try to achieve. So basically, it's preventative for bad things to happen, but also for
Yeah.
good things to happen. And also, it's like onboarding before you've even started, and onboarding before you've even arrived.
Yeah.
And yeah,
The
I
type
hope.
of onboarding that you want as well. That's the thing, is when everything's decided by the institution, it's like these people sit in a room and say, what are all the things we think that a student needs to know?
Mhm.
And then you arrive and then they tell you. And that's just, I mean, well, that's right through education all round. In fact, what do we think people need to know, and let us just tell you.
Yeah,
Whereas, and as you say, generations are shifting. Things are on demand. Things are more organic. Things are more like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to know. And they're not really that happy about ceding control over this to others. It feels very disempowering, demotivating. So to be able to actually generate your own relationships on your terms, I mean, I'm just thinking back about university, imagining being able to find your tribe earlier,
yeah,
rather than getting to third year and being like, meeting somebody and be like, God, I wish I'd met you guys sooner, how things would have been different.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
it's just the quality of experience is so different.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about technology, is, of course, that we can do that today. And I think one thing we shouldn't also underestimate, that this generation is so much used to having both online connections and offline connections. If you look at, I don't know, their Instagram followers, like the number it is, more than 50 or even like higher, the percent of those followers, they've never met them in person.
Yeah.
And they're following their Instagram page. So like we all think we should focus on only that, but like building those online connections is actually, yeah, it doesn't really, it's almost intertwined these days. Like you should focus on both. And that's why I think, yeah, a platform that's specifically focused on that is a huge plus for students. And if
Well,
it's a
this
huge
is
plus for
sorry.
students, if it's a huge plus for students, if you have a long-term view on it as an institution, you will see it's a huge plus for you as well. And that view doesn't even have to be so long, in my view, because like some of the universities we use it for in April, yeah, we use it for student support. Yeah, we use it to prevent bad things from happening and prevent mental health issues and prevent isolation and increase satisfaction. But since we're using it from April onwards, we can also see that by doing those good things for the student, they're actually improving the metrics they want to improve, like their conversion and their retention. And I think it's just, that's a side effect. So you focus on doing very good for the students, and you will see you actually improve your numbers as well.
Yeah, and this is the key thing, isn't it? It's not when you start from the point of view of conversion and metrics and numbers on an Excel file, you can forget the human side, and essentially this is a social product. It's a social service. It's a human service, and as you say, you take care of that correctly, and the byproduct is clear. That everybody sort of benefits. And what's encouraging for me is that, see, if we talked a couple of years ago and you told me your idea, my concern would have been that universities tend to, can be in a bit of an academic bubble, not quite connected to what's happening generationally. There's higher education in particular, just very far behind in terms of modernizing the way that education is delivered. You get like a university like Leeds in the UK saying, we're going to get rid of lectures because it's no longer consistent with how people learn. and there's an uproar in the academic
Mhm.
community because lectures have been around for 1,000 years, and it's that kind of mindset. And so I was worried that it just wouldn't be something that would take off. But then looking at your growth,
Yeah,
it's
but
clear that universities are really conscious of this issue, and this seems to be something that's chiming with them. I mean, how talk a bit about the growth. I mean, what
yeah.
has that been like for you? Because it seems to have happened. You're running out of space for logos on the
It's
website.
it's happening fast, but it was very tough. I mean, like
Yeah.
higher education is an industry. I think especially like if you're just I started this with Lars. Like if you start as just two young guys and you want to get a meeting with the marketing director or the head of recruitment, head of student support, even like that's so hard if you're doing something new. So as you said, like if we when we try to get meetings in, that has been our hardest part for the last, I would say, not the last half year, but the 2 years before.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually the main challenge. It wasn't that our product wasn't functioning or that the results were not great, like they were mind blowing, but still, yeah, the hard part was really to get a foot in the door and to get them to listen, to do something different, and to
Yeah.
convince them by taking that more long term view. But by doing good, you can actually also improve those metrics. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's it actually was one of the main challenges. And I think what changed that around is results. So we had a couple of very good pioneers. I would mainly name Uppsala University and Utrecht University.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those contact persons have been so supportive, like also in orchestrating our next steps, introducing us to others, presenting with
Right.
us at conferences, like we would also do next September. Like that's something that has been so supportive. So yeah, that's really why last year it took off. Before we just had to bring in those results for them to start shouting it, because us shouting it, that wasn't really enough. But it's good to see that the market is increasingly listening.
What kind of challenges did you hear when you were having these initial conversations and you were listening to the concerns of people who were maybe a little bit reluctant to begin? What were their concerns?
I think the main concern is to lose control. I mean,
Ah,
we think we really like the fact that we orchestrate exactly what's happening on the platform. That the university liked that in the past. They know what's happening, they control it, they monitor it, they do everything about it. And I think letting loose that control and it becoming a student-led environment, I think that's definitely the main challenge, and still is. Like that's the part where universities just have to realize that if you look at all the successful platforms for this generation, like there isn't a single successful platform. There's none where students are being controlled constantly. No one likes to be controlled. Like not just Gen Z. I think we all not don't like it. And this generation even more. Like they're blocking advertisements on Facebook. They're blocking advertisements on any channels, on their cookies or whatever. Like
mhm.
that's a huge development. So yeah, the fact that universities have to be able to lose control is something that's very scaring at
Yeah.
first, but also there the results are pretty impressive because obviously we've got our software to to find things and flag things or hide things in that sense, but it's software doing it. It's not a person that's controlling them. And I think the other
Mhm.
part that's very strong is students are actually supporting it themselves a lot. If someone does something or shares something that's not okay, like if two students then would say this is not okay, it's being automatically hidden. And then of
Yeah.
course someone from us and the software looks at it. But I think that's also one of the things that you very underestimate how much people are speaking up these days, this generation, if something is not okay on the internet. And
Mhm.
I think that's why it can even become a self-managing system. It already is.
Yeah, yeah, because they're used to this. I mean, online communities are essentially organic. I mean, you have the moderators,
Yeah,
who come in when something's flagged, but who flags it? It has to
it's
be
the
flagged
users.
usually by users. Yeah,
Yeah,
so they're used to this, and they're certainly not children and at all. And I do find, I don't know, maybe it's experience, but I do find a sort of a growing maturity of learners at this age compared to before, perhaps because education systems are beginning to let go a little bit of control at earlier stages
yeah.
and allow people to kind of develop, find out who they are. So we're in a very different paradigm right now, and
Mhm.
this seems to fit perfectly with where we are.
And there's a
I'm
big
just,
benefit
yeah,
as well, right? I mean,
uh-huh,
if you let control way more, it also lets go of a lot of time. I would say it's a very efficient way of having a student-led community
hmm,
that's actually managed by software and by the students itself. And I think
yeah,
that's, of course, we do refer to the website, for example, or where to find information, but that's not like pushing anything. It's really like, hey, once you're already here, because we got such good activation, it's more like if you want to know more about like the practical stuff, this is where you can go,
yeah.
and it's more like post signing about where to find it.
Yeah, yeah. And what's happening if because obviously this can be a rich seam of information or data or whatever for the institution. Say, for example, there's groups of prospective students or forthcoming students who are talking about I don't know how the academic credit structure works, and the same questions are being asked again and again. Is there any kind of moderation to be like, hey, these questions are being asked all the time, and we see on the internet, on our website, that we're not really being very clear about that. So maybe we should take that information and use it to clarify. Or do you have to wait for the students to actually directly contact the institution because they're not monitoring it? I mean, how would that work?
Yeah, I think the interesting part there is that based on the kind of groups that are created, we already know a lot, and like that's of course information that we report to the universities that they can view, like what kind of groups are being created, and
Mm-hmm.
also um, even when it's about information sharing in the groups, like that's possible to report on it. So if a topic comes back a lot, it's something that we report on. So they definitely learn a lot from those insights. But when it's to
Great.
one-to-one conversations, yeah, it's encrypted, so it's not, you don't know what's going on, and I think that's actually what you shouldn't be like. That's for any uh, proper communication services, that information should be encrypted. So, but for the groups, you can actually learn a lot. Like if you see that I don't know, yoga is a huge group at the university. Like before they're even starting, you should consider maybe doing something with it. Like this is more from again like a social view. But if you want to create events, you can really learn what are the things that stick with your students, or what are the things that really are on top of their mind. And if
Yeah.
it's about a practical question that we've seen being asked a lot, um, yeah, we've got a standard pop up like, hey, if you really want to answer like a practical question, this is where you can find a staff member. And it could just be any like direct link to their normal contact point. So if their normal contact point is emailing or calling, it's just like a calling button or like an email button. So just to get in touch with the university.
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see that there's even wider benefits than just the kind of friendship thing and just retention for the institutions. I mean, they can really improve what they're doing. As you say, there must be so much useful stuff coming back. Like, how does it work with so say a student's coming in, say I'm going to Utrecht in like
Mhm.
September. I mean,
Nice.
what's the kind
You're
of, oh well,
welcome,
yeah,
man.
yeah. If I'm going to study in Utrecht in September, which I'm not, I've studied enough. But what's my kind of journey like? So if I get my Go and Connect link in what sort of April or something like that, I mean, talk me through what it is that I'm going to see, what I can do, and then from the other side, what the university's getting, just to kind of get an idea of the functionality and the journey through. Also, where it ends.
Yeah.
When do I lose contact with this?
No, I think it's good to know that there's some options there, because obviously the journey isn't the same for every university,
Right.
and also they know best like what is the perfect timing on using this, or what is the perfect timing on getting the attention of their students about this. But let's take like an ideal example where you would get your admissions or your offer letter, and as part of the offer letter, like it says, of course, hey, congrats, Mark, you got into Utrecht, you're gonna have a good time.
Thank you.
But it's also going to say like, hey, are you curious who's going to Utrecht as well? Click here. So it could even be part of the offer letter in an ideal case, and then one click
Mhm.
away, like when they sign up, and like obviously we've got all the smart logins where most of the information is already there, like the profile picture, all of those things. Um, yeah, from there, like they will directly be able to be in that groups part. Like as I explained, that you based on your interests are in a very a lot of different groups, and that you really become part of something directly, and you directly start browsing around the other people that are just got their offer or are also going to. And I think from there, what's happening from a student side, like, and also from a university, we report. So we tell them, and they can see on an aggregated level what's the engagement looking like. So how many connections are they making on average? Are they making connections with different nationalities? How much chats are going on? What are the top groups? What kind of questions are coming up there indeed? Um, and we even like, this is something that's pretty fresh, but I really, really like it. We even have ways of estimating based on the number of connections that students are making, and how engaged they are, and how likely they are to enroll, or maybe better said, like if they're at risk of enrollment.
Is
Because
that
that,
anonymized, this kind of quantitative data that you're
yeah,
getting?
so
Yeah.
normally it is anonymized.
Hmm.
Of course, like there's requests from business schools, particularly, to know more about like, hey, which students are that, so that we can give them another call and we can work on that. Like if we would do that, like of course we need to change things around in terms of like our agreement with the user, by telling them like this is something that we do, and it's still not showing any of your text messages, but it's showing that you're not making a lot of connections. So yeah, we could report that to the university. Yeah. So it's just something that we would change then. But when it's more about like the maybe column, I think the most important thing is not like what a university does with that. It's what the software does with it. Because let's say, Mark, you're going to Utrecht and I'm your only friend. Then, but I've got 10 friends on the platform already. Then my friends, like because we've got a common connection, um, might see you as a suggestion. So those 9
Mhm.
friends of me that are not connected with you, we've got a common connection. So we might suggest them to connect with you as well.
Yeah.
And so basically, for that maybe column, or the people at risk of yeah, enrolling, or the people that are not so active, we help them. We help them to build those connections. We help them by suggesting them to be in certain groups based on interest, or to connect with specific people.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great part, because then we actually see that that population goes down. So basically, that should mean that the enrollment probability of the entire group goes up, and also the way that they are actually onboarding. So like the social side goes up, because you know the number of connections is going up. And yeah, that's something that we constantly see and have seen as a good thing for connection building, and also for preventing mental health, for integrating at the university, and I
Yeah.
hope at some point even for study results, because yeah, of course that's
Yeah.
hard to measure, but I really feel like, also personally, and when talking to some of our users, um, that having those connections and having that network right from the start is such a huge plus for their entire experience, that I think it can even positively benefit their results.
I don't doubt it. I really don't doubt it, you know, and I've worked in academia for a long time in higher education as a teacher, as a, you know, sort of faculty director and things like that, and been on all different sides of it. And it's always the same. It's the sense of belonging, it's a sense of connection and acceptance, it's a sense of being comfortable with, to be able to be who you are. You really see it coming through. And the students that are struggling academically, they tend to be having other issues too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not isolated. I mean, that's, yeah,
Agree.
I really don't doubt it. And I mean, of course, it'll be easier to measure like a kind of pre and post Go and Connect intervention in terms of, you know, retention rates and average
Mhm.
grades and things like that. More difficult to draw the causative connections, but I see from your website that there's a lot of qualitative feedback coming in all the time with people saying how they feel, that they feel, well, what I've seen is like they feel more, they feel safer, they feel more relaxed and
Mhm.
confident about going.
Mhm.
um you're now a couple of years kind of into this and stuff, you know, are you starting to get, are you getting that feedback from people who are now kind of looking back and saying, wow, this has made a difference? I'm
Yeah.
in first year, second year, or
Absolutely, and I think like qualitative feedback. I know it's something that we always like to see statistics, and of course we gather that as well. But we
mm,
really focus on qualitative feedback a lot because we learn a lot from it,
mhm,
and we really learn what the impact is in a broader sense. Exactly like you're saying, like what's the impact in 1 or 2 years time, um, and I think yeah, for every university that we work with, which is over 50 now, I think we're close to 60, 58 it should be today.
wow.
So for all of them, we gather at least 1 or 200 qualitative feedbacks, and
Mhm,
we always use that also as a way to show to the university of what an actual impact is making. Because of course those figures are nice, but those stories, like it really says a lot. There was like from one university in Germany, like their life right now as we speak, and there was a student from uh, Germany actually. That's an incoming student, and he thought like, "Wow, do I really need this going to environment?" But what he did sign up, and he started using it, and then he went on holiday to Cairo. So what did the guy do? He said like, "Hey, he just looked for incoming students that's gonna be with him in September." And he sent them a message saying like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna be in Cairo on holiday, but we're actually starting together in September." And then, yeah, they met up in Cairo, and they that must have been such a good experience again
yeah,
for the Egyptian students who are
mhm,
about to go to Germany, don't know a lot about Germany yet, and they hear from a German guy going on holiday. Oh, so that's, I think those personal stories, they're huge, and that's probably they will stay friends for life and help each other throughout their whole studies. And I think that's what's really happening on the platform. So that's the qualitative feedback, and I think that's why we try to focus on that a lot as well.
I mean, I'm really seeing from you, Cornelis, that you know we talked about before, and you made it very clear that it's a human thing. You know, you're focusing on improving the experience. You're focusing on and improving the quality of the experience for the student, and all the undeniable kind of good stuff that happens for the institution is, you know, a very useful byproduct of it. And the more we talk, the more I can see that that's absolutely, you know, where you're coming from. It's about these stories, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
the data is great, the metrics are great, but it takes one story of somebody saying, yeah, we met up in Cairo and this is how it felt, and to watch them grow as friends and go into this experience, you know, sharing a
Mhm.
sense of a journey before it begins.
Yeah, and
It
also
must be
like
incredibly valuable for you to feel, you know, to see the impact this is making.
yeah, and also I think for especially for smaller groups that are able to find each other. I mean, even for
Yeah.
most of the universities we work with, the LGBTQ group is quite big.
Mm.
Like this is also an easy way for them to feel already connected and to find others. Because are you gonna speak out in a Facebook group and say like, "Hey, I'm this. Is there anyone else who's
Mm.
interested in and to go to a bar?" I don't really want it to be something that based on their needs changes, like the example of the students with children, like the example of vegetarians, of different sport players, of could be anything, could be Harry Potter lovers, gamers are a big thing. Also within Helsinki, I see Mats just gave a very nice comment, so thanks for that. And yeah, I think that's what it needs to be. It needs to align with their needs, because by creating those stories for them and those experiences, like that's the most important thing. So my hope really is that like student satisfaction and student support is becoming a key metric for even marketing and recruitment departments.
Right.
And that's what I really hope they will realize more and more, and starting to do so. But we definitely need more steps there.
Well, you are up. You're nominated as a finalist for the Pioneer Awards 2022 in the category of student support, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Which must have been an amazing thing, because I mean, obviously, it
Yeah.
seems like a whirlwind. I mean, you must feel like you've just got started, and suddenly you know, what's that number 58 confirming today, and up for a big award. Which I sincerely hope you get, because it sounds to me like you very much deserve it. This is what I love about all of this, is the simplicity of it. I know the tech is not simple, but just the idea is just so organic, and so like you kind of look at it and you're like, well, why wouldn't we do that?
Are you going? Are you going to NAFSA, Mark, or
Going to
any
where?
other
Sorry.
conference? Are you going to NAFSA or another
No,
conference?
no, no, not this year. No,
Well,
no.
I think it's so simple, because like if you're going, like the first thing you do as well is to find out who's going
Yeah.
there. Like so that's the idea is very simple, but to do that in a good way, yeah, you need good tech to facilitate it in a way that feels authentic, that feels safe, that feels natural, that feels uncontrolled, because that's the only way you can actually build friends, in my view.
Mm-hmm. And where is all this heading? I mean, at some point, I don't know when you're going to get to take a breath from all this, because it seems like, you know, it's one of those, like, you're just kind of like keeping up with demand. But when you do get to take a breath, where do you think that this is all going? I mean, what in your sort of vision, where do you think you might want to develop this? Is there new functionality that you might want to add? Do you want to work on, I mean, for example, working more with the institutions and helping to make this more of a seamless use of community building? Like what you said there about there's a huge number of students signing up for yoga. How do
Mhm.
we then support them to you know, set up their own yoga groups? Do we think in advance about space and time for that? And you know, all of these opportunities that you can actually continue the community building seamlessly, in a way that's still organic and still student driven.
Mhm.
Is that the kind of area you're focusing on, or where do you want to take the Go and Connect thing?
Yeah, well, let's be clear that the core should always be on the student and about
Mm,
friendship software and friendships building. And I think if you look at this generation, they're used to a pace of innovation that's crazy. So our focus is also to keep our platform up with that pace that the students are expecting, to make sure we serve their needs best, because I still feel like that's the best way to serve the university needs in the end as well. So our focus isn't for now on like other services or anything. We want to do the thing that we do right. We want to
mhm,
keep on doing it right and even better, because it's constantly changing, and it will constantly change. The demands of students, the expectations of students, the way they interact these days on platforms online. So that's our focus. I think we, of course, like if there's some interesting case with a specific university that wants to work on something, and we think we can learn from it as well, and we can do things with it. We're here to learn, and we're here to grow better. But our
mhm.
core and our focus will always be the student.
Okay, perfectly put. And I'm just wondering as well, that raises the question, how big is Go and Connect in terms of your team?
Yeah, it's 12 people now, so it's
Okay.
also super well nice, but still small. I think half of that is tech actually. So we're
Right.
a very neat small team
Hmm.
when it comes to working on this concept, and I really like that. Of course, growing the team is one of the key things if you want to expand. So it's something we're focusing on heavily also right now. Um, but
Hmm.
it's something also I really enjoy personally. Of course, it's nice to have a lot of people to think about the ideas that we're having and to constantly make it better and better. Um, so yeah, on taking it next, I would say we just have to keep on doing a good job at the universities we work with, because that has been our growth. Like they will do the shouting and they will hopefully do the big part of the marketing part for us, which is what I really hope. But of course, yeah, like we've got some steps to make there.
It does seem like that though, that but for both the institutions and for Go and Connect themselves, that because you're the whole ethos of the platform is to let go and be, user driven or student driven, student generated stuff, that and self-managing in a way
Mhm.
that you're able to do such a good job with a smaller team in any case, because that's the whole point, isn't it, about not having to have people controlling and every little aspect of this, that you're able to just make sure everything's working, make sure that the right things are getting done, make sure that you've got the bird's eye view and you can be conceptual
Mhm.
about it and keep innovating, but not micromanaging, which obviously takes far more people and would kill the product anyway. So it would kill the service. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and I really, of course, I'm also just still very proud and very happy that we're making so much students happy and that we're being recognized by that with like a nomination for something like the Pioneers Award. I mean, yeah, for us that would be huge if we win it. Of course, like even the nomination is huge. So,
Yeah.
and I think the category fits us perfectly. I just hope
Mhm.
that more people, the people we talk to, start to realize that that category actually aligns a lot with marketing and recruitment.
Yeah. 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 As you say, it seems to all be coming together a little bit, that the concept of what marketing and recruitment is and what it's connected to seems to be broadening, that it's not just metrics and conversions and funnels, but it's experience, and it's a more human service, right? And it doesn't begin and end with these kind of moments of contact. There has to be more of a flow.
It's a dream.
Yeah. Cornelis, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really, really interesting. We'll make sure we tag Go and Connect in the comments, just so people that are interested in finding out more can find that. I'll make sure we put the website in there as well. Is there anything else you want us to pass on to people?
Oh, of course, like I'm on LinkedIn as well. Like they can
Hmm.
ever anytime reach out, and I think it would always be cool. Like even if they're not directly keen on doing this themselves, to see how we do it with other institutions, because I think they can at least learn from it, and it might
Hmm.
inspire their own internal processes. So I would encourage everyone to at least take 20 minutes to see it once.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Cornelis. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed for you in the awards, which are in September, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Really
Okay. Take
appreciate
care.
it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, all the best.
Have a
Amazing what
nice
you've done. And just wish you all the best with it.
have a nice day and a good time in Utrecht.
I will do. Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.